Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Mass. Here we have some dice being rolled to see who's going to be going first. Nathan on Bug Delver, a deck that has kind of inherited the top spot in the Delver hierarchy, gets to play Oko, the most powerful planeswalker currently legal. Not entirely clear if Run and 6 is actually better than him or not, but right now he's top dog and Bug gets to run him. On the other side, we've got Corey with a newcomer to the format in a Breach deck, Underworld Breach. Absolutely incredible in its power level. I mean, we're talking like Yawgmoth's Will level busted, and it's going to be very interesting to see how long we get to play with this card in Legacy. It does strike me as probably too good. We'll see. I mean, it is incredibly powerful. Brain Freeze, the big part of the engine. Of course, it is a graveyard strategy, so a little bit more fragile. And Nathan does line up, as far as disruption goes, pretty well. Maybe optimal. He's got counters for the stack. He has discard for Corey's hand, and he can even impact the board with cards like Abrupt Decay or Assassin's Trophy, compared to many of the Delver builds, which would be stranded with cards like Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning trying to affect the board. Of course, not going to have any targets in this Breach deck. The only permanents likely to be lands, artifacts, and the Breach itself. So we got a Brain Freeze for 6 cards here. That looked like 4 cards. I might have missed that. Couldn't see all of those. But Brain Freeze, we got Lotus Petal, Brain Freeze for 6 cards. Tarmogoyf on the other side of the board here. And while the graveyard has just been loaded up with goodies, I don't actually know that Goyf's stats are going to be relevant. Looks like he has the Underworld Breach in hand. He's able to preordain first. And Lotus Petals are all good here. Breach, if this resolves, it's going to be a wrap. And here you go, we get to witness this happen. Corey's going to be keeping a storm count here. Every 3 cards in the graveyard right now can be converted into 1 mana in the form of recurring these Lotus Petals. And every time Brain Freeze is cast, it's going to be exponentially more cards going into the graveyard. So Brain Freeze is going to put 15 cards into the bin. Lotus Petal being replayed. And he actually has 2 of them. It's going to add a couple of Storm, and we'll have another Brain Freeze. This one should get the rest of his deck. Can also fire off the excess copies at Nathan, potentially get some hidden information revealed in Game 1, though Bug Delver is a pretty popular deck. Corey has been studying this format. He may actually be pretty close to knowing Nathan's 75, as he's been putting in a bunch of work getting into Legacy here. And Breach, an incredibly powerful deck. A very fun one. And there we see game number 1, Grape Shot, Brain Freeze, Thassa's Oracle. Take your pick. See if Nathan can find a way to win one of these games versus what may be the most busted configuration. Well, the configuration, I'm certain, is not rock solid yet. There's a lot of designing to be done here. Cards like Enlightened Tutor. Just exactly how good are they? The sideboard, lots of tweaking to be done, but Breach incredibly potent. Brain Freeze is a legacy card again. I've not really seen that since the days of High Tide. Played that card in Vintage back in the day as well. Various Oath of Druids lists were able to create an infinite storm count with, say, Tidespout Tyrant and some Moxes. Every time you play a Mox, you'd return a Mox, create infinite mana and infinite storm. Brain Freeze somebody out from there is pretty solid. But this is a little less hoops to jump through here. You just need to resolve your breach and start recurring cards from your graveyard. It is very linear in terms of the strategy, so they have to they have to have access to their graveyard. So cards like Tormod's Crypt, when I've played against this, have been very potent. Leyline of the Void as well. One of the only issues, if we're going to start coming up with weaknesses here as well, it doesn't have Force of Vigor to answer these graveyard hate. Traditionally, well, not traditionally, since the printing of Force of Vigor, oh, and there's the Leyline. Since the printing of Force of Vigor, a lot of these graveyard strategies happen to run green and are able to enjoy getting rid of things like multiple Leylines. We've got a turn 1 Delver and Leyline pretty close to ideal here, in a pair of Delvers as well. Oh no, this is not looking good for Corey. He is facing down a very fast clock, potentially a 2-turn clock if these Delvers flip. That could just be it in 2 turns, and this Leyline, Corey's not going to be able to combo off through it. He's going to have to find a bounce spell. Doesn't look like he has one in hand. So, oh, and there's getting set back another turn. He really needs an Echoing Truth or something along those lines, as this Leyline right now is completely hamstringing his ability to get this job done. A Leovold gets added into the mix. I was just about to say, like, if he's got Grape Shot, he could potentially clear these Delvers, but now that's actually going to Ancestral Nathan, drawing him 3 cards. He really doesn't need all of them to stick around anyways. Just a Leovold and a Delver would be plenty of clock, still be roughly 2 turns. Of course, that fetch land right now representing the final point of damage. This Leyline just completely railroading Corey's chances. Game 2, no answer for it in hand. And finally the Delvers flip. He's got everything he needed except the bounce. There we go, the Brain Freeze and the Breach. Bunch of packs, a Silence. He was in excellent shape if he just had the bounce spell for that Leyline, not to be. And we're going into game 3 here. Corey going to have the play. This deck absolutely capable of winning on the first turn. I believe I heard a quote from Rich Shea secondhand about Breach, saying it was the most powerful feeling deck that he's ever scrubbed out with. Usually when you find a build like this, you just kind of take the world by storm. Very often innovating early on in the cycle can give you a huge advantage. Right now, potentially because of the nature of combo decks in Legacy, people are at least somewhat prepared for it. They're going to have graveyard hate, and you're going to have some type of answer for it. Leyline, Grafdigger's Cage, Tormod's Crypt, some of the new artifacts, variants on Relic of Progenitus, all kind of interesting decisions. There's no absolute clear-cut choice. I tend to come down on the side of Leyline when it's absolutely necessary to win. If my matchup is so poor that I've really got to have a piece of graveyard hate, I generally might as well, if I'm going to be mulling to it, might as well be mulling to a Leyline as compared to a Grafdigger's Cage or something less potent. Leyline really does do the most. And it's the fastest. Oh, and Nathan opening up both games here now. Leyline, turn 1. Can Corey have the answer? We believe we've got Seal of Cleansing as the primary way of taking that out. We've got a Ponder. He digs, he sees Silence. Silence and Orm's Chant, both able to throw up the shields. Ooh, and a Thoughtseize. We see Force of Negation, Force of Will, Grape Shot, Preordain. And he does actually go for the Preordain. The rest of that stuff going to be reactive. If Corey does draw his bounce spell, however, he'll be able to back it up with Force of Will or Force of Negation if he's playing it on Nathan's turn. Tarmogoyf. And right now, Goyf going to be pretty tiny. Is that... There we go. They just caught that. That graveyard pile is actually an exile pile for Corey. And Corey actually Force of Willed the Goyf. I don't think I agree with that at all. We'll see how this works out. I think that may have been an instance where he was thinking that that exile pile was actually his graveyard. Seal of Cleansing would actually be exiled right now. There's our Leovold. Well, if he draws Breach, this is going to be a very interesting game. 3 damage coming in. Collector Oof. Oof. That is rough. And Grape Shot, not the best way to clear that boy. Doing 1 damage at a time. We've got a Inquisition. Corey considering brain freezing himself. Just going hellbent. And he does. So he's going to brain freeze himself, try and load up the graveyard. Inquisition's going to grab the Grape Shot. Oh, and I missed that interaction. I thought he was brain freezing himself to get extra cards into the graveyard, but he's actually just going to be scooping it up here, facing down Leovold and Collector Oof. A very difficult to overcome mix of board presence, discard, counter spells. Bug is a real test for any combo deck out there, and part of the reason why it is one of the top dogs in the format, despite playing a somewhat fair game. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.